$1,000 for trash. Grant Huxley said, loud enough for the entire auction room to hear, and the laughter that followed rolled across the glass-walled conference room like a cold wind. Ethan Walker stood at the back of the room in a faded denim jacket, his work boots leaving faint dust marks on a floor polished so brightly it reflected people who had never worried about rent. In his right hand was a plain envelope with 10 crisp $100 bills inside, money he had saved from late-night break jobs, weekend oil changes, and saying no to every small comfort a tired man could want. Beside him, his 9-year-old daughter, Maddie, held his left hand with both of hers, her blonde ponytail tied with a blue ribbon that had seen better days. At the front of the room, Claire Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Holdings, stood in a cream-colored suit beneath a screen showing the property for sale, an abandoned garage on County Road 18, a rusted shell with broken windows, a sagging roof, and weeds tall enough to brush the headlights of passing cars. "Mr. Walker," Claire said, her voice calm, professional, and distant, "you understand this property is sold as is. No warranties. No repairs. No refunds." Grant smirked and leaned back in his chair. "No miracles either." A few executives chuckled. Ethan did not. He looked at the image on the screen the way some men look at a grave and others look at a seed. "I understand," he said. Claire studied him for a second longer than necessary. There was grease beneath one of his fingernails, a small tear near the cuff of his shirt, and a steadiness in his eyes that did not match the room's opinion of him. "And you're prepared to pay the full amount today?" she asked. Ethan placed the envelope on the table. $1,000. Grant let out a soft whistle. "Congratulations. You just bought a graveyard for cars." Maddie's fingers tightened around her father's hand, but Ethan only gave her a gentle squeeze. He had learned long ago that dignity does not need a microphone. It simply stands still until the noise wears itself out. The auction clerk slid the papers toward him, and the room settled into that cruel kind of silence people use when they are waiting for someone poor to make a mistake. Ethan picked up the pen. For one quiet moment, the only sound was the hum of the air conditioner and the faint scratch of ink across paper. Claire watched his signature form slowly, Ethan Thomas Walker. At the sight of the middle name, something flickered across her face, but it disappeared almost as quickly as it came. Grant was already looking away, bored now that the joke had reached its ending. But it had not reached its ending. Not even close. Outside, the late afternoon sun poured over the parking lot in long gold strips, touching the hoods of luxury cars Ethan could not afford to wash, let alone drive. Maddie walked beside him, trying hard to be brave, but children can feel humiliation even when adults dress it up as business. "Daddy," she asked softly, "did they laugh because we lost?" Ethan stopped near his old Ford pickup, its blue paint faded by 12 summers and 1,000 honest miles. He looked toward the edge of town, toward the forgotten garage waiting under a tired sky. "No, baby," he said. "They laughed because they couldn't see it yet." Maddie looked up at him. "See what?" Ethan opened the truck door for her, then glanced down at the folded deed in his hand. The address stared back at him, 417, County Road 18. His breath slowed. He knew that road. He knew that number. Years ago, before medical bills, before funeral flowers, before he became a single father with more responsibility than sleep, his own father had mentioned that place in stories told over black coffee and the smell of motor oil. A garage where honest men once fixed cars for people who had nowhere else to go. A garage where something important had been built, then buried. Ethan looked back at the tall glass building where Claire Whitmore and her people were still laughing behind tinted windows. He did not smile. He did not boast. He only folded the deed carefully, placed it inside his jacket, and whispered, "Let's go see what they threw away." The road to County Road 18 stretched past soybean fields, shuttered farm stands, and a row of mailboxes leaning like tired old men. Ethan drove with both hands on the wheel, quiet as the sun dropped behind the tree line and painted the windshield amber. Maddie sat beside him with the deed on her lap, smoothing its edges the way a child smooths a treasure map. "Do you think it is scary?" she asked. "Only if we let it be," Ethan said. "Do you think it is broken?" "Most things are, sweetheart. Can broken things still matter?" Ethan glanced at her, and something soft moved behind his eyes. "Sometimes they matter the most." The garage appeared just beyond a bend in the road, half hidden behind waist-high weeds and a crooked chain-link fence. The old sign above the office had lost most of its letters, leaving only the faded ghost of a name. The roof sagged near the west corner. One bay door hung slightly open. A cracked soda machine sat by the entrance, sun-bleached and useless, as if it had been waiting for one last customer since 1989. Maddie pressed closer to the window. "Daddy," she whispered, "it looks lonely." Ethan parked the truck near the front bay, cut the engine, and for a moment neither of them moved. The silence outside was deep, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine and the steady chirp of crickets in the weeds. When Ethan stepped out, gravel shifted beneath his boots. The air smelled like rust, dry grass, old gasoline, and rain that had not yet fallen. He unlocked the gate with the key Claire's clerk had handed him, though the lock was so corroded it seemed surprised to work. The chain fell with a tired scrape. Maddie followed close behind, carrying the small flashlight from the glove compartment. Inside, the garage was worse than the pictures. Dust lay thick over everything. Spiderwebs stitched the corners together. A row of cracked tool cabinets lined the back wall, their red paint faded into a dull brown. There were oil stains across the concrete floor, a calendar from 15 years earlier still hanging beside the office window, and one yellow work glove resting on a bench as if someone had set it down and simply never returned. Maddie shined the flashlight slowly across the room. "Is this our new home?" she asked. Ethan looked at the broken lift, the leaky ceiling, the scattered glass, and the old American flag folded on a shelf with surprising care. "No," he said gently. "It is our second chance." She nodded like she understood more than she should. Ethan walked toward the back wall, his eyes tracing the bones of the place. He could see what others could not. The wide bays. The strong foundation. The road access. The room for expansion. The kind of layout a real mechanic would have chosen if he planned to serve working people, not impress investors. His father's voice drifted through memory, low and warm, telling him that a garage was not made by tools, but by trust. Maddie tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, look." Behind a rusted parts cabinet, a narrow section of wall paneling had pulled loose. Ethan moved the cabinet carefully, wood groaning against concrete, then knelt and pried the panel back with his pocketknife. A small metal box sat inside the wall, coated in dust but untouched by time. Maddie held the flashlight steady, her breath quick with wonder. "Is it money?" she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "No." He opened the box. Inside were folded papers, an old photograph, and a pencil worn nearly to the eraser. He lifted the first sheet and slowly unfolded it. It was a hand-drawn plan for the garage, detailed with measurements, service lanes, customer waiting areas, and a system for low-cost repairs written in careful block letters. At the bottom was a signature that made Ethan's throat tighten. Thomas Walker. Maddie looked from the paper to her father's face. "Grandpa?" Ethan could not answer at first. He turned another page, and the flashlight caught a second name written beside his father's, elegant and precise. Eleanor Whitmore. For a long moment, Ethan heard nothing, not the crickets, not the wind, not even his own breathing. The garage was not just junk. It was not just a forgotten building sold for a laugh. It was a secret two families had left behind, and somehow, by grace or grief or something heaven keeps quiet until the right hour, it had found its way back into his hands. By Monday morning, the whole town had already decided what Ethan Walker had bought. Not a garage. Not a chance. A punchline. The first post appeared before sunrise, shared. From an account that belonged to one of Grant Huxley's assistants, local single dad spends last $1,000 on abandoned repair shop. By breakfast, the comments had multiplied like weeds after rain. People called it Walker's junk box. They joked that the only thing he could fix there was his own bad judgment. Someone drove by and left a plastic toy tow truck at the gate with a note taped to it that said, "Empire Starter Kit." Maddie saw it before Ethan could hide it. She stood beside the fence in her school backpack, staring at the little truck while the morning wind pushed strands of blonde hair across her cheek. "They are making fun of you," she said. Ethan picked up the toy, pulled off the note and set the truck on the office windowsill. "Then we will give them something better to look at." "Are you mad?" "A little." "Are you going to say something?" He looked down at her with that quiet steadiness she knew better than any bedtime story. "No. When people mock your beginning, do not hand them your ending." She did not smile, but her shoulders loosened. That morning, after he dropped her at school, Ethan returned to the garage with a broom, a borrowed ladder, and a thermos of black coffee. He swept broken glass into careful piles. He pulled weeds from the fence line until his palms burned. He patched the office window with clear plastic and duct tape. He did not have money for new paint yet, so he scrubbed the old sign until the faded letters showed through the dust. Every hour, someone slowed down on County Road 18. Some laughed. Some filmed. Some shook their heads the way people do when they want pity to look like wisdom. Ethan kept working. The sun climbed high, turning the tin roof into a sheet of heat. Sweat darkened the back of his shirt. Dust stuck to his face. Still, he moved with patience, as if each board he lifted, each nail he pulled, each stain he washed away was not just labor, but a prayer for something wounded. Around 4 o'clock, an old Buick rolled to a stop outside the gate, its engine coughing in uneven bursts. Behind the wheel sat Mrs. Ruth Bellamy, a retired school librarian with silver hair, kind eyes, and a purse held together by faith and safety pins. Ethan knew her from church food drives and the discount grocery store, where she always counted coupons twice before reaching the register. She lowered her window. "I heard you bought this place," she said. "Yes, ma'am. I also heard you lost your mind." Ethan wiped his hands on a rag. "That part is still under inspection." Ruth laughed softly, then the Buick shuddered and went quiet. Her smile faded. "I cannot pay much today. Let me look first." "Ethan, I mean it." "So do I." He opened the hood and leaned in. The problem was simple, but not small to a woman living on a fixed income: a loose battery cable, worn terminals, and a belt that needed replacing soon. He cleaned what he could, tightened what he could, and coaxed the engine back to life. Ruth reached into her purse with trembling fingers. Ethan shook his head. "No charge." Her eyes lifted to his. "Your father said those same words to me once." Ethan froze. The wind moved through the open bay behind him, carrying the smell of dust and old oil. Ruth looked past him at the garage, and her voice softened with memory. "Thomas Walker helped half this town from this building. He and Eleanor Whitmore had a dream here, before money people buried it under paperwork." Ethan felt the folded drawings in his jacket pocket like they had grown heavier. "You knew about that?" Ruth nodded. "More than I was ever supposed to." Then she placed one thin hand on the Buick's steering wheel and looked at him with a seriousness that made the laughter of the town feel suddenly small. "Be careful, son. Some folks did not forget this garage. They were just hoping no Walker would ever remember it." That night, rain came down over County Road 18 like the sky had been holding its breath all week. It tapped against the patched office window, drummed across the tin roof, and ran in thin silver lines beneath the bay door Ethan had not yet been able to seal. Inside the garage, a single work light hung from an extension cord, throwing a warm circle over the concrete floor. Maddie sat on an overturned milk crate near the office, wrapped in Ethan's old flannel shirt, coloring a handmade sign that read Honest Repairs. Honest people. Ethan was beneath the service counter, rewiring an outlet with careful hands, when the sound came from the road. Not thunder. Not wind. An engine struggling. Then a horn. 3 short bursts. Maddie looked up. "Daddy?" Ethan stood, listening. Headlights flashed through the rain outside, crooked and desperate, and then an ambulance rolled into the gravel lot, its engine coughing so hard the whole vehicle seemed to shake. The driver stepped out wearing a soaked jacket, his face tight with worry. "Please tell me you are open." Ethan moved toward him. "Not officially." "Can you help?" "What happened?" "Engine lost power 2 miles back. We have a boy inside who needs to get to Mercy General. Roads are flooding, backup is at least 20 minutes out." Maddie was already on her feet with the flashlight. Ethan looked at the ambulance, then at the tools still scattered across his half-cleaned floor. The garage had no license on the wall yet, no painted sign, no waiting room, no promise that anything would go right. But there was a child in the back of that ambulance, and sometimes grace does not wait for perfect conditions. "Pull it into the bay as far as you can," Ethan said. "Daddy, can you fix it?" Maddie asked. "I have to." "What if you cannot?" "Then I will keep trying." The driver eased the ambulance forward while Ethan lifted the bay door by hand, rain running down his sleeves and collar. The vehicle rolled in just enough for the front end to clear the storm. Ethan opened the hood, and heat rose in a damp cloud. He smelled coolant, wet rubber, and electrical burn. His eyes moved fast, but his voice stayed calm. "Maddie, light here." She held the beam steady with both hands, though her fingers trembled. The driver hovered near the bumper. "Is it bad?" "It is honest," Ethan said. "Bad would be hiding." He traced the problem through the engine bay, checking the battery, the alternator belt, the loose connection near the fuse box. Rain hammered the roof so loudly it sounded like applause from a crowd that had not yet learned respect. In the back of the ambulance, a mother whispered to her son, her voice low and steady, trying to lend him courage. She barely had left. Ethan heard it, and something in his chest tightened. He thought of hospital hallways. He thought of promises made beside beds. He thought of every moment when a person's whole world depends on strangers choosing to care. "Try it now," he called. The driver turned the key. The engine clicked once, coughed, then died. Maddie swallowed hard. Ethan did not curse. He did not panic. He reached deeper, found the corroded ground strap, cleaned it with a wire brush, tightened it with a wrench, then used a spare cable from his own truck to bridge the connection. Again. The key turned. This time the engine caught, rough at first, then stronger, then steady. The mother in the back began to cry quietly. The driver stared at Ethan like he had watched a closed door open. "How much do I owe you?" Ethan shook his head. "Get him to the hospital." The ambulance backed into the storm and sped away, red lights washing over the garage walls like a blessing. Maddie stood beside her father, rainwater dripping from the ends of her hair. "You saved him," she whispered. Ethan looked at the empty road. "We helped him keep going." Neither of them noticed the woman standing near the gate beneath a black umbrella, her phone still recording. Her name was Denise Caldwell, a local reporter and the boy's aunt. By morning, the town that had laughed at the garage would wake up to a video titled "The Forgotten Shop on County Road 18 Just Saved a Life," and for the first time, people would stop driving by to mock it. They would stop because they needed it. By sunrise, the video had traveled farther than Ethan Walker ever expected his name to go. Denise Caldwell's recording showed the rain, the broken bay door, Maddie holding the flashlight with both hands, and Ethan leaning over the ambulance engine like a man listening for a heartbeat. By noon, people who had laughed at him were sharing the clip with captions that sounded almost kind. By 3 o'clock, a line of cars had formed along County Road 18, not luxury cars, not collector cars, but the tired vehicles of working people, delivery vans with bald tires, pickup trucks with cracked mirrors, sedans with warning lights glowing like small red worries on the dashboard. Ethan had no waiting room, so people stood under umbrellas and drank coffee from paper cups Maddie carried out from the office. He had no receptionist, so Ruth Bellamy sat at an old desk and wrote names on a yellow legal pad. He had no sign but Maddie's handmade poster taped to the window, the letters uneven but honest, honest repairs. Honest people. And somehow, that was enough. Ethan fixed a loose belt for a grocery clerk and charged her $12 less than the part had cost him. He reset a sensor for a retired Marine and refused payment when the man admitted his pension check would not clear until Friday. He patched a leaking hose for a young mother with 2 children in car seats and said, "Pay me when life gets kinder." The woman covered her mouth, nodded, and drove away slowly, as if leaving too fast might break the blessing. Around 4 in the afternoon, a gray sedan pulled into the lot and parked near the fence. Claire Whitmore stepped out wearing jeans, a navy sweater, and sunglasses that could not fully hide the hesitation on her face. No assistant. No black company car. No Grant Huxley standing behind her like a polished warning. Just Claire, walking carefully through the gravel as though the place she had sold for a joke had become sacred ground overnight. She stopped outside the open bay and watched Ethan work on the retired Marine's truck. "You sure?" the old man asked, holding out a folded $20 bill. "I am sure," Ethan said. "You served this country. Let me serve you back once." "That is not good business." "Maybe not," Ethan replied, tightening the last bolt. "But it is good character." Claire's face changed, almost too slightly to notice. In her world, people measured value by square footage, market demand, tax advantage, and leverage. Here, in a garage with rain stains on the ceiling and coffee cooling on the counter, value moved differently. It had hands. It had patience. It had respect. Maddie spotted Claire first. The little girl froze for a second, then looked toward her father. Ethan followed her gaze, wiped his hands on a rag, and walked over. Claire removed her sunglasses. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the garage filled the space between them, a socket wrench clicking, Ruth turning pages, tires rolling slowly over gravel, a radio playing low in the office. "I saw the video," Claire said. "So did half the county. You did something remarkable." Ethan glanced back at the ambulance-shaped oil stain still dark on the concrete. "I did what was needed." Claire looked around. "You have customers. People have problems. And you think you can solve all of them?" "No," he said quietly. "But I can treat them like they matter while I try." That answer landed harder than accusation. Claire lowered her eyes, and for the first time since Ethan had met her, she looked less like a woman who owned buildings and more like someone standing outside one she had never truly entered. Maddie came out with 2 cups of coffee, one for her father and one for Claire. "It is not fancy," Maddie said. "But it is hot." Claire accepted it with both hands. "Thank you." Ethan watched her take a careful sip, then saw the recognition in her eyes as she looked toward the back wall, toward the hidden space where Thomas Walker's drawings had been found. He knew then that she understood more than she had said. He also knew she had come for a reason. Still, he did not press. Quiet dignity gives people room to tell the truth when they are ready. Claire looked at him over the rim of the paper cup. "You knew who I was when I walked in." Ethan nodded. "Yes. And you still offered me coffee." "People deserve a second look," he said. Claire's fingers tightened around the cup, and outside, beyond the fence, another car pulled in, then another, then another. What had been a forgotten garage yesterday was becoming something else by the hour, and Claire Whitmore, who had spent her life buying and selling property, was beginning to realize she had sold the one place that still knew how to build people. For the next 3 weeks, the old garage on County Road 18 changed one honest repair at a time. The weeds disappeared first. Then the cracked windows were replaced with donated panes from a contractor whose work van Ethan had fixed without overcharging him. A retired painter brought leftover white paint from a church renovation and brushed the office walls until the room looked less like a memory and more like a beginning. Maddie swept the front step every morning before school, then taped customer thank you notes beside her handmade sign. Ruth Bellamy kept the yellow legal pad at the desk, writing names, phone numbers, and small details no ordinary shop would have remembered. Mrs. Alvarez needs her car by 3 because of daycare pickup. Mr. Jensen cannot stand long because of his knees. Tyler from the feed store is saving for trade school. Ethan read every note. He treated each one like it mattered, because to him, it did. But beneath the noise of socket wrenches and morning coffee, another kind of work had begun. Late at night, after Maddie fell asleep in the office chair with her math homework on her lap, Ethan unfolded the drawings from the metal box and studied them under the hanging work light. Thomas Walker's handwriting filled the margins: low-cost diagnostics, transparent pricing, community training, shared inventory, apprentice program. Beside it, Eleanor Whitmore's notes were cleaner, sharper, almost corporate before corporate had learned to sound cold: scalable model, regional supply network, ethical membership structure. Ethan traced the 2 signatures again and again. His father had not just dreamed of a garage. He had dreamed of a system. Claire returned on a Thursday evening just as the sky turned purple over the fields. This time she did not pretend to be a customer. She stood in the open bay with her hands in her coat pockets, watching Ethan compare the old drawings to a modern spreadsheet on a second-hand laptop. "You found them," she said. Ethan did not look surprised. "You knew they were here." "I suspected." "That is different from knowing." Claire accepted the correction without defending herself. Rain clouds gathered beyond the tree line, and the smell of wet grass drifted through the open door. For a long moment, she stared at the page bearing Eleanor's name. "My mother believed business could have a conscience," Claire said quietly. "My father believed conscience slowed business down." Ethan looked at her then. "And what do you believe?" She breathed in, but the answer did not come easily. In boardrooms, Claire Whitmore could speak for 40 minutes without notes. Here, in a half-restored garage with oil on the floor and a child's crayon drawing taped to the wall, the truth seemed to require more courage. "I believe I became very good at protecting things that did not make me proud." Ethan turned a wrench slowly in his hand. "Why sell it to me?" "Because Grant wanted it demolished before the end of the quarter. A retail developer had already made an offer. I thought if I sold it quickly, quietly, to someone outside the company, maybe I could delay him." "You sold it like it was worthless." Her face tightened. "I know. You let them laugh." "I know." 3 small words. No speech. No excuse. Just a crack in the glass around her. Ethan looked back at the drawings. "My father never told me about your mother. My mother never told me much either. She died when I was 14. After that, this place vanished from family conversation. Files moved. Names changed. Anything with heart in it was called sentimental and boxed away." The work light hummed above them. Maddie, sitting near the desk with a peanut butter sandwich, looked from her father to Claire and stayed quiet, as if even she understood this was not a moment for childish questions. Claire stepped closer and pointed to Eleanor's notes. This was supposed to be the first of many. Affordable repair centers near small towns. Training for people who needed a way back. No hidden fees. No predatory loans. No shame. Ethan gave a faint, sorrowful smile. "That sounds like my father. It sounds like my mother too." The words softened something between them, but only for a breath. Then Ethan opened another folder, one he had pulled from the county records office that morning. "There is a problem." Claire's eyes moved to the page. Her expression changed before she even finished reading. "Where did you get this?" Public Archive. Ethan. Her voice dropped. This is Grant's redevelopment filing. I know. He tapped the bottom line with one grease-stained finger. He is claiming the garage is unsafe, inactive, and subject to commercial reclamation. That would let him challenge your deed. Not if this place is active, compliant, and protected under the original community use agreement. Claire stared at him. You found that too? Ethan reached into the metal box and pulled out one last folded document. The paper was yellowed, but the signatures were still clear. Thomas Walker. Eleanor Whitmore. County witness seal. Claire covered her mouth, not from fear, but from recognition. Ethan's voice stayed low, steady, and kind. Your mother did not just build a garage with my father. She protected it. Outside, thunder rolled far across the fields, gentle but certain. Claire looked at the old agreement, then at Ethan, then at Maddie's sign in the window. For the first time, she seemed to understand that this was no longer about land, money, or embarrassment. It was about redemption. It was about truth. And somewhere in the polished offices of Whitmore Holdings, Grant Huxley was about to learn that the thing he wanted buried had already started breathing again. The notice arrived on a bright Tuesday morning, carried by a courier in a pressed gray jacket who looked uncomfortable the moment he stepped through the garage door. Ethan was helping Tyler from the feed store rotate tires on an old pickup, teaching him how to check tread depth with a penny and patience, when Ruth Bellamy called from the office. Ethan, you need to see this. The envelope was thick, white, and expensive, the kind of paper powerful people use when they want bad news to feel official. Ethan wiped his hands, opened it, and read quietly while the shop noise faded around him. Maddie stood beside the coffee counter with her backpack still on, watching her father's face for signs of fear. There were none. Only stillness. What does it say? Ruth asked. Ethan folded the letter once. They are sending inspectors. For what? Tyler asked. Safety violations, improper operation, zoning review, and potential reclamation. Ruth's mouth tightened. That man is moving fast. Ethan looked through the open bay toward the road. 3 black SUVs were already turning into the gravel lot. Behind them came a county vehicle, 2 men in suits, a woman with a clipboard, and Grant Huxley stepping out like he had arrived to collect something already dead. A local news van followed, its camera operator raising the lens before anyone had spoken a word. Grant smiled when he saw the line of customers, the fresh paint, the repaired windows, the sign in Maddie's careful handwriting. Well, he said, buttoning his jacket, look at this. The junkyard learned how to dress itself. No one laughed. That seemed to irritate him more than laughter would have pleased him. Ethan walked out to meet him, his sleeves rolled, his hands clean enough, his posture quiet. Grant. Mr. Walker, Grant said, loudly for the camera. I am here with county compliance officers regarding serious concerns about unauthorized commercial activity on this property. We are open for inspection. That is generous, considering you may not be open for business by dinner. Maddie stepped closer to Ruth. Claire was not there yet, and Grant knew it. He moved with the confidence of a man who had chosen the hour carefully. The inspectors began walking the bays, checking outlets, fire extinguishers, storage shelves, invoices, signage, floor drains. Ethan answered every question without raising his voice. Where are your customer records? In the office. Parts receipts. Filed by date. Waste disposal. Contracted with Miller Environmental, pick up every Friday. Employee records. No employees yet. Apprentices are volunteers until certification. Grant's smile thinned with each answer. The garage was not perfect, but it was not careless. It was poor, yes. Patched, yes. Still healing, yes. But Ethan had done the work the right way, even when no one was watching. Then Grant turned toward the camera and lifted his voice. Let us not romanticize this. What we have here is a charity mechanic playing businessman. A viral video does not make a man qualified. Good intentions do not override the law. The words hung in the warm air. A few customers shifted uneasily. Maddie looked at her father, waiting for the wound to show. Ethan only reached into the office drawer and pulled out a blue binder. He set it on the counter. With both hands. Then let us talk about the law. Grant blinked. Excuse me. Ethan opened the binder. Customer invoices. Parts receipts. County permit applications. Fire inspection request. Environmental pickup contract. Insurance binder. Signed statements from customers who received repairs at disclosed cost. Nothing hidden. Nothing inflated. The camera moved closer. Ruth stood straighter. Ethan turned another page. Here are the free repairs, clearly marked as community assistance. Here are the paid repairs. Here are the taxes set aside. Here are the 12 people on the apprenticeship waiting list. Here are the letters from Mercy General, the school district transportation office, and the Veterans Outreach Center requesting service partnerships. The county officer with the clipboard looked impressed despite herself. Grant's jaw tightened. Paperwork does not change zoning. No, Ethan said. But history does. He reached beneath the counter and removed the yellowed agreement from the metal box, now sealed in a clear protective sleeve. Maddie carried it to him with both hands, as carefully as if she were carrying a candle through wind. Ethan placed it before the inspectors. This property was registered under a community use agreement signed by Thomas Walker, Eleanor Whitmore, and a county witness in 1992. It protects the site for affordable automotive service, vocational training, and emergency transportation support. Grant's face lost color. That document is not valid. A calm voice answered from behind him. Actually, it is. Claire Whitmore stood at the edge of the bay in a dark blazer, rain still shining on her shoulders though the sky had cleared. In her hand was a certified copy from the county archive. She walked past Grant without looking at him and placed it beside Ethan's. I verified it this morning. The garage went silent, not empty silent, but alive silent, the kind that arrives when truth enters a room and every lie forgets its next line. Claire looked at the inspectors, then at the camera, then finally at Grant. This inspection may continue. But the intimidation ends now. Ethan said nothing. He did not need to. Maddie's handmade sign fluttered softly in the open bay, and for the first time, the people gathered there saw the garage not as a broken place being defended by a poor man, but as a promise that had survived long enough to be remembered. By the next morning, the story had moved beyond the county. The video of Claire Whitmore standing beside Ethan Walker, confirming the old agreement while Grant Huxley stood speechless, was playing on local television, shared by veterans groups, small business pages, and parents who had once sat in repair shop waiting rooms praying the bill would not empty their grocery money. But Grant did not build his career by accepting embarrassment quietly. At 9 o'clock sharp, Ethan received a formal invitation to Whitmore Holdings' downtown office, though invitation was too polite a word for something written like a warning. Claire called 10 minutes later. You do not have to come, she said. Ethan stood in the garage office, looking at Maddie's sign, Ruth's yellow legal pad, and the old photograph of Thomas Walker and Eleanor Whitmore now pinned beside the door. Yes, I do. Grant will try to corner you. Then he will learn corners do not scare men who have slept in hospital chairs. Claire went quiet. Ethan. I will be there at noon. The boardroom at Whitmore Holdings sat on the 22nd floor, high above the city, with a table long enough to make ordinary people feel small before they even sat down. Grant had filled the room with board members, attorneys, consultants, and 2 investors who kept whispering behind silver laptops. Ethan entered wearing clean jeans, a pressed blue shirt, and the same worn boots he had worn the day he signed the deed. Claire sat near the head of the table, her expression controlled, but her eyes followed him with something deeper than concern. Grant smiled as if the room belonged to him. "Mr. Walker, thank you for coming." Ethan remained standing. "You made it sound required. Let us call it efficient." Grant clicked a remote and a photo of the garage appeared on the screen, taken before Ethan cleaned it. Broken glass. Weeds. Rust. "This is what you purchased." Another click showed the crowded lot, the repaired bays, the handwritten sign, the line of customers. This is what public sympathy created. He turned to the board. "It is charming. It is emotional. It is also fragile." Ethan said nothing. Grant placed a folder on the table. "Whitmore Holdings is prepared to buy back the property and all related business activity for $2 million. A soft murmur moved through the room. Ethan looked at the folder. "No," Grant's smile tightened. "Perhaps you did not understand." "I understood." $5 million, then." The room quieted. Claire looked down at her hands. Ethan thought of Maddie asleep in the office chair, Ruth writing names, the ambulance in the rain, the retired Marine holding out a $20 bill with pride still intact. "No," Grant leaned forward. "You are poor, Walker. Poor men do not build empires. They get lucky, then they get bought." The words landed with the weight Grant intended, but Ethan did not flinch. He reached into his worn leather folder and removed a stack of papers. "May I use the screen?" Grant laughed once. "For what? A family slideshow?" Claire looked at the technician. "Put it up." The first slide appeared. Walker Honest Garage, 6-month regional proposal. Grant stopped smiling. Ethan's voice was calm, almost gentle. "In the last 24 days, we have serviced 186 vehicles, completed 42 community assistance repairs, and received partnership requests from 12 nearby towns, 3 vocational schools, 2 veterans organizations, and Mercy General's non-emergency transport division." He clicked again. A map appeared with small blue dots across the state. "These are locations with no affordable, transparent repair access within 15 miles. Another slide. "This is the membership model. Low monthly fee, discounted labor, full invoice transparency, apprentice training, and emergency repair credit for families below county median income." The investors stopped whispering. A board member leaned forward. Ethan continued. "This was not invented by me. It was started by Thomas Walker and Eleanor Whitmore. I only remembered what people like Grant tried to bury." Grant stood. "This is sentimental nonsense." Claire rose before he could say more. Her chair rolled back softly, but the room felt the shift like thunder without sound. "Grant, sit down." He stared at her. "Claire, you cannot be serious." "I am." She turned to the board. "Mr. Huxley filed redevelopment paperwork without disclosing the community use agreement, misrepresented the property's legal status, and attempted to pressure a private owner under the appearance of compliance review." Grant's face hardened. "You are choosing a mechanic over your company?" Claire looked at Ethan, then at the old photograph on the screen, where her mother stood beside his father in front of the garage when both of them still believed decency could be built into a business plan. "No," she said. "I am choosing the part of this company that should have survived." The boardroom fell silent. Grant lowered himself into his chair, not defeated by volume, but by truth. Claire faced Ethan. "Whitmore Holdings will not buy you. But my private foundation will fund the first 3 expansion sites, with no controlling ownership, if you accept." Ethan studied her carefully. "Why?" Her voice softened. "Because my mother helped plant this. Your father kept the roots alive. And you made it bloom." Ethan looked around the room at the people who had expected him to name a price for his dignity. Then he closed his folder. "We build it honest," he said. "Or we do not build it." Claire nodded. honest. And in that polished room above the city, where money usually spoke first and loudest, a single word became the beginning of something no one there could laugh at anymore. 6 months later, the old garage on County Road 18 no longer looked like something the world had forgotten. The weeds were gone. The windows shone clean in the morning light. The bay doors rolled up smoothly, painted deep blue with white lettering across the front that read Walker and Whitmore Honest Motors. But Ethan Walker had kept one thing exactly as it was, the original rusted door from the first bay, now mounted on the inside wall above the front counter. Some people asked why he left it there. He always gave the same answer. So we remember what people can become when someone stops calling them worthless. The grand opening of the first expansion site drew more people than the parking lot could hold. Families stood beside pickup trucks, school vans, delivery cars, and old sedans that had carried too many worries for too many years. Veterans in ball caps shook hands with trade school students wearing new work shirts. Ruth Bellamy sat proudly at a folding table, still using a yellow legal pad even though Claire had offered her a tablet 3 times. Denise Caldwell stood near the front with a camera crew, smiling like she had known from the beginning that the rain-soaked video would become more than a local story. Maddie stood beside the ribbon in a pale blue dress, holding oversized scissors with both hands. She was taller now, or maybe she only seemed that way because pride can make a child stand like sunlight. Ethan knelt in front of her and straightened the ribbon in her hair. "You ready?" he asked. "Are you?" "A little nervous." "Daddy, you fix engines in thunderstorms." He smiled. That was easier. Across the lot, Claire Whitmore watched them with quiet eyes. She was not standing apart like a CEO waiting to speak. She was helping Mrs. Alvarez carry paper cups of lemonade to the refreshment table, her sleeves rolled up, her smile unpracticed but real. Over the past months, Claire had changed in small ways that mattered. She listened before speaking. She asked names and remembered them. She stopped treating kindness like a weakness that needed legal protection. And every time she entered the original garage, she paused beneath the photograph of Eleanor Whitmore and Thomas Walker, as if offering a silent apology to both of them. The program began without fanfare. No celebrity host. No fireworks. Just a microphone, a small platform, and a crowd of working people standing in the heat with hope on their faces. Ethan spoke first. "This place was never supposed to be about cars alone," he said, his voice steady but low. "Cars are how people get to work. Cars are how parents get children to school. Cars are how someone makes it to a doctor appointment, a job interview, a second chance. When a car breaks down, sometimes a whole life feels like it stops. We are here to help it keep going." The crowd grew quiet. Not bored quiet. Listening quiet. Then Maddie stepped to the microphone. Ethan started to help her, but she shook her head with a small brave smile. "My dad says broken things are not worthless," she said. "They are just waiting for honest hands." For a moment, no one moved. Claire looked down, blinking quickly. Ruth pressed a tissue to her cheek. A retired Marine in the front row removed his cap and held it against his chest. Maddie cut the ribbon, and applause rose across the lot, warm and full and long overdue. But the deepest silence came a few minutes later, when the new sign above the service bays lit up for the first time. Beneath the company name was a line Ethan had chosen himself, "From Junk to Justice." At the edge of the crowd, Grant Huxley stood alone in a charcoal suit, no longer part of Whitmore Holdings, no longer protected by the rooms where his voice had once sounded powerful. He had come quietly, perhaps out of pride, perhaps out of regret, perhaps because even men who mock beginnings sometimes need to witness endings. Ethan saw him, but did not call him out. Claire saw him too, and did not look away with anger. That was the grace of the moment. Justice had arrived without needing cruelty to prove itself. Grant stared at the sign, then at the full parking lot, then at Ethan surrounded by people who knew his worth. He had once said poor men did not build empires. Now he stood before one built not from greed, not from revenge, not from shouting down the people who laughed first, but from dignity, patience, truth, and the stubborn belief that honest work still had a place in America. As the sun lowered over County Road 18, Ethan walked back into the original garage and stood beneath the rusted door on the wall. Maddie slipped her hand into his. Claire stood on his other side, close but respectful, her shoulder almost touching his. No one spoke for a while. The shop smelled of clean oil, fresh paint, coffee, and sawdust from the new counter. Outside, engines started, children laughed, and someone rang the small brass bell Ruth had installed. For every finished repair. Ethan looked at his daughter, then at Claire, then at the old door that had once been mocked as scrap. They thought I bought a building, he said softly. Maddie leaned against him. But you bought a promise. Ethan smiled, and this time, after all the laughter, all the doubt, all the papers meant to frighten him, the silence that followed did not feel empty. It felt holy. Because some men do not need to prove their worth by becoming louder than the world. Some men simply keep showing up with quiet hands, honest eyes, and enough grace to turn what others throw away into a place where everyone finally remembers how dignity sounds when it is allowed to speak.